Hello and welcome to a Week 17 Championship edition of the Established to Run Waiver Wire Show. My name is Adam Levitan. Shout out to anyone listening to this because it means you are indeed in your Super Bowl. Shout out to you. Daigle, how's it going today?
There were injury reports coming through on Sunday while football was being played, which tells you the exact situation we're all in this week.
Allow us to be the first to wish you a very Merry Christmas coming up on Wednesday. Happy Hanukkah. Everything else here. We are recording this show on Monday. Want to get this out early because there are games on Wednesday. Obviously, there will be updates. We're recording this prior to tonight's Saints Packers game. Any updates for this you will find in Daigle's article. Be sure to consult that for much more and updates. All right, Daigle. It was a week in which we only had maybe a handful of injuries. I saw 4. Can add David Njoku to the list. Can make it 5, including Jalen Hurts going down, Drake London getting banged up. And then we have questions about guys, will they play this week? Will they not? Guys like Alec Pierce, J.K. Dobbins, etc. I think for most people, they're looking for maybe a streamer at defense, maybe a streamer at wide receiver. But for the most part, it's going to be come as you are. I don't see anything great here. On top of the list is someone that we should talk about, which is Hollywood Brown. Only played a little bit. I believe it was 16 routes, 8 targets on those 16 routes, though, for Hollywood Brown. If you think that expands, obviously the targets per route run is not sustainable. If you think that expands to 25 routes, 30 routes, then you can start making a case to actually play Hollywood Brown here in your Super Bowl. Daigle, what do you think about that idea on Hollywood?
Completely agree with you. This entire time, every week watching the Chiefs, I asked myself, okay, what are they going to figure out ahead of the postseason and make us all upset because they're undoubtedly going to win a third consecutive Super Bowl? And at least in this last game, Patrick Mahomes let go of the ball 2.5 seconds from snap to throw, his quickest time all year, because teams don't have an answer to defend either Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy together when 2 of the fastest receivers in the league are just getting the ball underneath and then creating yards after the catch. You sprinkle in a little bit of Travis Kelce getting open in zone coverage, a little Samaje Perine coming out of the backfield. Kareem Hunt, oddly enough, is the more explosive running back now over Isaiah Pacheco, and they are figuring out their ways. I will say for that game in Hollywood Brown, although, yes, like you said, only 16 routes, so targeted on 50% of his routes, which is insane, and we expect his usage to grow in his second game back, especially as the Chiefs continue using DeAndre Hopkins as solely a rotational wideout. But more importantly, this game could be fun. We are still waiting out word on George Pickens. He is reportedly trending towards playing, and we've seen the Steelers be an entirely different offense with Pickens on the field. 29th in yards per play without him these last 3 weeks, compared to 10th in yards per play, 5.7 with Russell Wilson whenever Pickens has been available with him. Not only that, but in terms of getting some pushback for the Chiefs offense, Chris Jones suffered a calf injury, didn't practice on Monday, is questionable for the short turnaround on Christmas, and the Chiefs have dropped to 27th in pressure rate when Chris Jones doesn't play. So there is some faith here that maybe this could be a high-scoring game if all the dominoes fall correctly, which would then lead us to then stream and start Hollywood Brown immediately.
Yeah, and I think he's worth picking up to see what happens here, see if you need him. The problem is it's going to be early. You're going to have to make a decision very early on whether you want to play Hollywood Brown or not. I will say on the good side for Hollywood Brown, I saw him running routes that Rashee Rice was running, and Rashee Rice was about to absolutely break fantasy before he got hurt. Hollywood Brown running those routes where he kind of catches the ball over the middle and then runs away from linebackers. I mean, that is a really nice role in this Chiefs offense for Hollywood Brown. So yeah, I definitely think worth an ad to consider if you want to start him on Wednesday. Obviously, Jalen McMillan went off again. I wouldn't say went off. Jalen McMillan played a very good game again last night in a very good matchup against the Cowboys. As we've been talking about for, 2 months now, this end of season stretch for the Bucs continues to be very, very good. They will get the Panthers late. And so if Jalen McMillan wasn't added in your league previously, I could see coming to him with a start. Beyond that, Daigle, I'm not seeing a lot of other wide receiver streamers. Anything more on McMillan or anyone else you want to mention at the wide receiver position?
It's pretty thin if you're desperate for wide receiver streamers. Hopefully, you've already had that position locked up because otherwise, especially in deeper 14 team leagues, you're waiting on injuries. Drake London with a hamstring injury. That would elevate Ray McLeod in a pretty good spot. We'll talk about Michael Penix in a second here. Calvin Austin, of course, has now stepped up for at least 5 targets the last 2 games without George Pickens. Maybe that's a good spot. Malik Washington, I know it didn't reach his ceiling, but would start again if Jalen Waddle were out. Alec Pierce still dealing with concussion. So maybe we can go back to A.D. Mitchell against the Giants this time, not against the Titans. So we have some faith in Anthony Richardson through the air. And then Washington's plethora of guys as well, if you think Penix answers on the other side. So there are deep league options to just monitor. And again, those streaming options, that injury report, that'll be updated throughout the week within the waiver column.
Okay, I want to go to tight end because we didn't mention the Tank Dell injury yet. Tank Dell obviously out for the season with a terrible dislocated kneecap and an ACL tear. I mean, it is dusty behind him. Sounds like they're going to get John Mechie back from his shoulder injury for this game against the Ravens. Also, they have Robert Woods, who is now losing the leaves off his trees at age 32. Xavier Hutchinson, who's been one of the worst wide receivers in the NFL this season. So it is ugly. You could see Dalton Schultz starting to consolidate some targets. He's had back-to-back reasonable games at least. Now, I'm not excited about this. It doesn't really overlap with what Tank Dell was doing, but at least there's more targets to go around. So I thought Dalton Schultz was worth mentioning in the fallout of the Tank Dell injury. And then Chigakonkwo, I mean, Mason Rudolph, it's been a lot of garbage time, but Mason Rudolph has been targeting Chigakonkwo at really high rates. Daigle, any thoughts on the fallout of Tank Dell injury and the Chig hot streak here?
Double-digit targets in back-to-back games, and maybe it does go awry for that matchup as a whole, but it is a friendly one against the Jaguars, where Aiden O'Connell even got Brock Bowers and both the Raiders running backs there just last week. So like the spot a lot for Chigakonkwo. If Schultz is not available, definitely my top streaming option of the week, if only for those double-digit targets now and back-to-back games for Rudolph. And yes, for Schultz, it's just complicated because we've seen this before. Like John Mechie popped up in the 2 months without Nico Collins, basically, for one game for over 70 yards and a touchdown. But again, that was without Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. Like now we're asking someone to be a second receiver for an offense that has arguably got worse throughout the year behind Nico Collins. I don't think that person exists. There's not a situation where I want to jam one of these Texans wide receivers in thinking they step up in terms of vacated opportunity because they already proved they cannot and will not. So I think Schultz is the fallout, honestly, for Tank Dell, and there's no one else to start beyond him.
Okay. At the running back position for streamers this week, hopefully you have all your one injury away stuff. At this point, you can start shedding guys like, say, Kenny Gainwell, who Saquon Barkley did not get hurt. There's no reason to have Kenny Gainwell anymore. You can start shedding those guys and taking chances on some guys who might actually play. That includes Alexander Madison. That includes Gus Edwards, guys who may have been dropped in your league due to underperformance. I mean, I couldn't believe Gus Edwards broke off a 43-yard run against the Broncos. I mean, I would have bet so much against Gus Edwards ripping off a 43-yard run in that game against the Broncos, but it happened. Now J.K. Dobbins is on the verge. His practice window has been opened. He's eligible to play here in week 17. So that's kind of a tricky one to watch there. And then, yeah, Madison was the feature back. Abdullah came in and played passing downs and had a decent game of his own. Any thoughts on those guys, Daigle, and any other running back thoughts off the waiver?
Lots of running back thoughts in the waivers because I do believe there are players you could plug in if you're desperate in deeper leagues. First of all, check if Zach Charbonnet was dropped anywhere with Kenneth Walker coming back. I doubt he was, but Kenneth Walker suffers what I believe was an ankle injury, was unable to return. So Charbonnet probably goes right back in as an RB1 this upcoming game. For Gus Edwards, it wasn't just the long 40-yard run he ripped off. His 68% of backfield touches was also the most he's handled in the last month without J.K. Dobbins. And now it's a very soft matchup against this Patriots front seven that in the last month, Devon Achane scored 2 receiving touchdowns against. Jonathan Taylor went over 100 total yards from scrimmage with a touchdown against. James Conner, remember, finished as the overall RB1 a couple weeks ago. And this past week, James Cook, 2 touchdowns, the overall RB4. A very good matchup for Edwards, assuming J.K. Dobbins, he does not get activated, and he's only continuing to increase ahead of the Chargers potentially making the postseason. For the Raiders backfield, a little more complicated because it was our worst fear, and the Raiders running 2 running backs. Hard for both players to get there. And although it was Madison who out-touched Amir Abdullah, Madison for his career has been the less inefficient option. And so because of that, Abdullah had 29 more total yards, and he finishes as the RB14 compared to Madison, who finishes the RB19. I think it's going to be a timeshare either way. A good matchup against the Saints. You can plug in both as RB3 or 4s depending on your status, but I personally lean. It depends what you want. If you want the touches, you go Madison. If you're just looking for the receiving usage, I believe that's still going to lean in favor of Abdullah. And then the two that I know were available everywhere. Let's start with Michael Carter, because James Conner suffered a knee injury. And remember, before week 16, before Sunday, Trey Benson didn't practice at all through his ankle injury. It's a short turnaround on Saturday for the Cardinals, who are now officially eliminated from the postseason. So assuming that Conner, who was not able to return to that game, came back out, stood on the sideline with a jacket, didn't have his helmet on at all, was just cheering on teammates. Maybe it was a little bit serious of an injury. Assuming that Benson also is not able to play, I would think we get every touch for Michael Carter here. DJ Dallas was active in that game, and when Conner left, it didn't matter. Michael Carter had 9 touches to DJ Dallas's 0. So Carter's the player we want to pick up and plug in. And then finally, we hinted at it last week for 14-team leagues, but Audric Estime had his most carries, 9, since week 10, which was also the last time Sean Payton came out and said afterwards that he's interested in getting Estime more touches. Payton yet again comes out and says, quote, he's earned more opportunities moving forward. And regardless if that's true or not, the fact is that game between the Broncos and the Bengals is the only one over 50 points on the entire Week 17 slate. We would expect it to be the highest scoring one, given that both defenses most likely won't be able to stop the other offense. So Estime also a serviceable option.
Yeah, a couple things. First, I agree. James Conner, there's no reason for him to come back and try to play. Cardinals are done. I could see Trey Benson, though, coming back. He had a rough rookie year, didn't get a lot of playing time. I could see him working to get back here. So if Trey Benson got dropped, I would add Trey Benson and Michael Carter and see what happens. On Estime, he only played, I believe, 15 snaps in this game and got 9 carries on them. I don't disagree that they want him in theory to play more. I just don't trust it very much at all.
Sure.
But yeah, I would love to see more of him. We'll see on Jaleel McLaughlin status here as the week moves along as well. All right. Quarterback streamers for this week. I would hope that you have a quarterback plan already set for your Super Bowl matchup. If you don't, there's probably some options out there, maybe including Michael Penix. Daigle, what do you think about quarterback streamers for week 17?
The two I'm most interested in is one, Bryce Young, because now in his last 6 starts, Bryce Young also adding 5.9 weekly rushing points, including this past week, 60 rushing yards and a touchdown. Cooper Rush, we just saw against that very banged up Buck secondary right now, have 8.3 yards per attempt against them on Sunday Night Football. So I do have faith for Bryce Young. That total between Panthers and the Bucks, the second highest of the week so far, only increasing at 49.5 points. And then Michael Penix did everything the team asked of him. They basically did not want someone taking sacks under center as a sloth. Penix takes 0 sacks on 9 pressures, and then also, more importantly, pushes the ball downfield and gives them life for an explosive passing offense. 5 of 8 for 11.3 yards per attempt on throws 10 yards downfield, and now it's this Commanders defense that has leaked a league-high 10 touchdowns on throws 20 yards downfield. I do think we could have some pushback here between Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix. So if you're in a spot where you are out a QB streamer and Penix is still available, especially in Superflex leagues, definitely start worthy, in my opinion, this week.
Yeah, I would want Drake London, I think, out there for Michael Penix. I mean, that would, because if not, they're going to go with Mooney and Ray McLeod and some dust balls. It's going to be much tougher. But yeah, sounds like Drake London, hopefully, he's going to be okay here. All right. Defense. This is what it all comes down to. I mean, I ran into the Falcons in my league, and I was like, well, I played the Colts. They had the Falcons, and I was just curtains, It is tough to overcome something like that. You can get back. And one of the reasons that I had the Colts, and I want to play the Colts, is because the Colts get the Giants and Drew Lock here in week 17, which is one of the best possible spots. Drew Lock is a absolute stone cold disaster. I also had Dolphins on my team preparing for this week 17 matchup against DTR. So those are certainly two that were on my radar for week 17. What do you think about those, Daigle, and how would you think about defense streamers for week 17?
Drew Lock now 1 touchdown to 5 picks and 11 sacks on the season, including 2 pick sixes this past week. Definitely the number one option to be ahead of the Colts if they're out there. Also, DTR, Dorian Thompson Robinson, is dealing with an injury for Cleveland right now. So we don't know if they're just going to throw Jameis Winston in for the next 2 weeks again. Either way, the Dolphins defense, very clearly a safe option. Dolphins still competing for the postseason as well against whoever the Browns want to throw under center anyways, especially if David Njoku, who now has a knee injury, undergoing an MRI on Monday, especially if he's out and just continuing to give them less options to pass to. And then I think the one that was probably dropped, but is going to be a top option, depending how injuries work themselves out, is the Dallas Cowboys. And that is assuming Kenny Pickett's under center for Jalen Hurts through a concussion. The team doctors cleared Hurts initially and then eventually pulled him back out. He got ruled out immediately, and then we will see what happens with his progression throughout the week. But obviously, Kenny Pickett showed us that he should no longer be in the NFL. The Cowboys would absolutely wreck the Eagles if he's out there.
Agreed. Okay. Anybody that we did not mention here that you want to get to for week 17?
It's much thinner behind then. Although Penix looked good, I don't think the Commanders are out of position to be started. It's still a rookie quarterback. So, of course, Dan Quinn can conjure up something against a rookie quarterback and only his second start, didn't have many preseason reps. So I don't mind going to the Commanders if you have that option. The Titans get the Jaguars. Mac Jones has been turnover prone, obviously. So I think that's a fine option. And then we'll see how the Saints fare on Monday night, but perhaps even the Raiders, that could be fine if you're digging for deeper options.
Okay. Shout out to you, grinding the waiver wire for 17 weeks, more than 4 months. Shout out to Daigle. Everybody, give Daigle a big round of applause in the comfort of your own home, in the comfort of your own car, for bringing you all the waiver information for more than 4 months. Job well done this season. Daigle, job well done to you for being in your Super Bowl. Obviously, we'll have updates to this article. More news will happen. The game tonight will happen. Daigle will have updates in his article for NFL Draft Kit subscribers. Normal show schedule this week. Silva with Team by Team. No solo pod actually this week. And then all DFS shows are indeed on normal schedule as well. For Daigle, for producer Ryan, for producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.